You guys can't just leave me here.
Yeah, good point.
Luis Lopez is a self-proclaimed psychopath, and that is front and center in GTA 4's second episode. He willfully does the dirty work for Tony Prince and the people he's indebted to, and that inevitably leads to a bunch of kills. Let's see just how many he gets and how he stacks up against fellow GTA protagonists.
It's bounce, baby. When I say bounce, I don't mean bouncing literally, I just mean...
I know what it means, Yusuf.
We begin with Luis caught up in the robbery Nico participates in with the McRearys. Once it's over, he's questioned by police and does the bittersweet symphony walk down the street until he eventually links up with Tony to begin the first mission. He complains about his life and the people in it when some of those people waltz in spouting slurs and taking his cash. Eventually, they get to the clubs and do some business. Until some of Luis's friends show up out front causing a ruckus. Luis tells them to simmer down and they give him grief about leaving the streets while he takes them back there. When he gets back to Tony, he joins him in a meeting with Rocco, a made man within the Ancelotti crime family and one of the guys that helped himself to his cash earlier. They find Rocco at Topgolf, failing terribly at hitting this union guy with balls, so he demands Luis do it instead. The rival Messina family drives up shooting at them, causing a firefight that leads to Luis's first 13 kills of the game. They escape the remaining mafioso in golf carts and part ways so that Luis can go meet his mom. He finds Mr. Santos in attendance, who lent Mama Lopez some money and is demanding payment. Luis lambasts this guy for predatory practices and agrees to participate in a fixed fight to pay the man off. You can choose to defeat the third fighter instead of diving, which leads to Luis killing Santos, but I chose to dive, since I don't think Luis is above taking a hit to his reputation in order to ensure his mom is okay.
Can't even win a fight for your mama?
Afterwards, he sees his buddies in the middle of the most obvious drug deal and talks his shit, so he joins them on another deal that was doomed from the start because Armando's phone was tapped and the authorities were just waiting for them. This results in Luis dropping 21 officers in just a couple of minutes. A couple days later, Luis's presence is requested by his moronic friends when they drive to Bohan to get some product, only for a rival gang to ambush them with the worst shots in Liberty City, as 20 more of them are killed off. Luis spots a couple of absolute buffoons at the club when he meets Tony there. They need to head out promptly to meet some triads, but run into Yusuf when doing so, who shows some interest in working with Tony and Luis. As they get there, we get confirmation that Billy tried setting Johnny up in the previous episode, which failed miserably, as does this meeting when Luis aggressively tells the triad they can't help him obtain the proper licenses for the business he's trying to set up. That KO begets more violence, with Luis responsible for keeping Tony alive as he fights his way out of triad territory for 30 more kills. Sometime later, Luis goes to Tony's apartment to find his idiot boyfriend Evan there dancing to loud music. Tony is passed out in the bedroom in a drug coma and gets brought back to reality when he remembers the Ancelottis are demanding he kill some union leaders across the city. Luis recognizes his boss is ill-equipped for that kind of work and takes the suitcase of explosives by force. He has 3 stops across the city, with the first guy operating a crane that results in 2 additional deaths to a couple of nearby construction workers. The second guy is driving an out-of-service train, so when that goes boom, there's only 1 death to account for. The final union leader is on a private jet at the airport, so with that explosion, Luis attacks 2 more kills between the union guy and the pilot. Back at the club, Luis is introduced to Ray Bulgarin, who wants to buy women, drugs, and sports teams. But while he enjoys his bitch-ass self at the club, Luis heads to a rival club at Bahama Mamas in order to hit on a woman on Rocco's orders. But her boyfriend and owner of the club walks in on her showing Luis who the throat goat of Liberty City is, and things get a bit domestic, so Luis gets mouthy.
That's not cool, bro.
I woman's mouth. And you think it's cool?
Sure.
And escalates things to push that kill total over 100 and drive the business down in that club. At Tony's apartment, Luis finds himself in unscrupulous company with Gracie Ancelotti, Rocco, and Evan all there, while Tony remains passed out on the floor. Luis wakes his ass up and they leave to purchase some perfect diamonds at a discount, but unfortunately for Luis, Evan demands to tag along, and they get to the docks to do the deal. This is when Johnny and the Lost MC attempt to ambush them and steal the jewels, but Evan takes off in one direction with the diamonds, while Tony and Luis go the other way and use explosives to decimate the bikers and some cops in their way. Once their wanted level is dropped, Tony verifies that Evan has been cornered by the bikers via social media, but always an optimist, Luis tells Tony that at least Evan didn't get away with ripping them off. Luis is then whored out to Maury Kibitz to help settle more of Tony's debt, and we find out this is Brucey's even more obnoxious brother. They head to the docks where Maury declares a hostile takeover of their operation, leading to a gunfight that has Luis assist Maury in and taking down 10 guys on the docks and another 4 in the subsequent boat chase. Luis goes from one over-the-top individual to another, but at least Yusuf Amir is pretty funny. Since he can't simply buy it, he asks Luis to steal a prototype helicopter from some arms dealers who are presenting it to potential buyers on a yacht. Luis sneaks his way into the pilot's seat and uses their own chopper against them for 17 more kills. He continues his work with Yusuf, who gives him a shotgun with exploding shells, and asks he join him for a deal taking place at the top of Rotterdam Tower. Luis goes up first to scope things out and learns a couple of Yusuf's partners were there to set him up, so Luis teaches them a lesson by tossing Tahir off the building. While the other climbs further up the tower, Luis is forced to use his new shiny shotgun to take down the officers for 16 kills. He follows Ahmed to the tippy top, and right after he makes a peace offering with a parachute, Luis makes him flinch, but before he can give him 2 for flinching, Ahmed slips off the tower and plummets to his death. He escapes that situation by base jumping off the tower and meets up with Tony, who has famed local gossiper the Celebinator in a chopper. He wants to take him on a nice tour of the city and convince him to stop writing scathing articles about it. Luis slaps him around a little bit and tosses him out of the helicopter over Happiness Island, but he jumps out and catches him, just to intimidate him into leaving their names out of his articles. They land on the island and the Celebinator waddles away in shame with some very poopy pants. The following mission is another killless one, as Luis wins a race against Mori in order to relieve Tony of his debt, with the only caveat being he has to do one more job with him and he'll be finished. Luis then drives to the club after Tony tells him he knows where the diamonds are and has him head to the museum to get them back. He uses the chopper he stole for Yusuf to land on the roof and gets into position. He shoots the old man who creamed himself over the diamonds, and 2 of their guards who attempt to fire back. As Nico and Johnny make their escapes, Luis drops in and takes the diamonds from the Jewish mobster. He runs back up to the rooftop and makes the incoming police chopper go boom for 3 more kills. Then on the way back, he tests the chopper out against 3 additional police helicopters loaded with 4 officers each. The next couple missions don't increase the kill count anymore, as Luis and Tony track Packy around the city to find Gracie's location after her kidnapping. The next one is Luis's final mission with Mori that also has Brucey tag along, when they steal 3 high-value cars and race through Liberty City while the police pursue them. They leave them on a boat to be sold, and we get the most satisfying scene in the entire game.
Man is nothing but beyond pathetic.
That's it, boy! Cut it out! Yeah! Yeah!
Are you kidding?
Yeah! Oh, God! Oh, yeah! What the fuck, man?
With one of Tony's debts paid off, Luis meets Ray Bulgarin at his house. He tells him that he's under surveillance by the National Office of Security Enforcement and wants Luis's help in taking down the team watching him. They drive to an underground parking garage and plant a bomb on Mr. Bulgarin's car, and wait for the Noose agents to get close enough to detonate it. That begins a chaotic battle against Noose that gives Luis 25 more kills in all. After dropping the Russians off, he meets Yusuf at his penthouse, who is walking around with his Hank Hill ass barely hidden by some whitey-tighties. His dad pops in with his gas fully flabbered, so Luis leaves and meets Yusuf a few minutes later. Not satisfied with that fancy chopper, Yusuf also wants to steal a tank, so Luis shoots the chains holding it and jumps down to get in it. While escaping the police, 4 officers are killed in action, while Luis drives that slow-ass motherfucking tank around the city. Once he drops that off with Yusuf, he's called into Bulgarin's house again and is told, not asked, to kill the owner of Liberty City's hockey team since he refuses to sell it to Bulgarin. He parachutes in so he can enter the building from up top, but security cameras witness the whole thing. That means the element of surprise is lost and Luis has to shoot up a well-armed and prepared team in order to get to Markiashvili. After the assassination, Luis jumps out of the broken window and parachutes down to a truck being driven by Bulgarin's right-hand man Tamir. Not necessarily keen to keep working for the Russians right away, Luis meets Yusuf again, and this time the crazy son of a bitch wants to steal a subway train. That means Luis needs to hop aboard and disconnect the front train, but is forced to battle LCPD's finest while doing so, resulting in a large bump in kills. He eventually disconnects the front car, and Yusuf picks it up using a specialized chopper to complete his growing vehicle collection. Ray Bulgarin calls Luis over soon after that operation and questions him about the diamonds. Luis tells him they belong to Tony, so it's not Luis's place to do anything with them. So in the meantime, Bulgarin sends our protagonist to a rooftop where he left the head of the cook that sold the ice to them. He sends a small platoon of Russians to try and kill Luis, but their aim is trash and they all fail their mission. As if trying to be killed wasn't enough, Luis endures something even worse when Brucey tries to steal himself a little kiss, but he gets denied, and Luis and Tony leave the club to trade the diamonds for Gracie. They hand the ice over, and as they start to leave, Bulgarin arrives with a small armed force to try and get the diamonds back, but they focus on Nico and Packy, so only one Russian dies sacrifice during Luis's escape. After that, Luis gets a call from Rocco and meets them in his favorite hangout spot, the dingy park bathroom, where he's told the Russians are out for blood. Rocco says either Luis or Tony need to die to appease them, otherwise the Ancelottis and the Russians will come after them. Rocco says he'd prefer to work with Luis, who can take over Tony's clubs, but he tells him to fuck off, and that's exactly what they do. But they take that as a sign to go to the club and inform Tony of the same details. So Luis drops by and tells Rocco exactly what he thinks. He's ready to kill Rocco too, but Tony fears the Ancelottis will come down on them with everything they have if he does. So he runs off while the Russians run in, so Luis can kill a whole mess of them to push his kill total into the 400s. That segues into the final mission, with Tony packing his bags and getting ready to get out of the city, but Luis convinces him to stay so they can take down Bulgarin and his business together. By together, I mean just Luis though, because Tony parks his ass at a nearby park and waits for Luis to do the dirty work. He ambushes the Russians at the amusement park on the pier, where they have drug shipments being packaged up. He destroys the vans filled with product and takes out all the Russians brave enough to shoot back, including Tamir. Through him, Luis finds out Bulgarin's craven ass is on a plane out of Liberty City and will continue to come after him from out of the country. So Luis speeds over to the airport and is saved multiple times by Yusuf blowing up aspiring hitmen. Luis successfully gets to the airport in time and shoots one of Bulgarin's men in order to board the plane, where 3 more go down. Ray comes out of the cockpit with no pilot in sight and tells Luis that if he kills him, then the grenade will finish him off. The choice is an easy one, as Mr. Bulgarin is executed and Luis is able to escape the plane somehow after the grenade explodes. He parachutes down to the park to meet Tony and celebrates, while Yusuf approaches, rattling on about partnering up with them to franchise the clubs. A homeless man digs through some trash and finds the diamonds along with that subscribe button so he can see more content like this. Consider hitting that like button if you enjoyed this video and tell that algorithm to wake its ass up. The game ends there, with Luis netting a stupid amount of kills in a short period of time. He places himself firmly behind Nico Bellic and ahead of Johnny, with the 3 GTA 5 protagonists behind him. I'll continue my GTA playthroughs, but for now, since 75% of you want to see Red Dead Redemption, I'll be moving into that series next. Thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.